Hey book friends! In this video, I'm going to talk about 3 romance books that I read recently. Beach Read by Emily Henry, Reminders of Him by Colleen Hoover, Christina Lauren's Love and Other Words. I gave Love and Other Words and Beach Read 3 stars. I gave Reminders of Him 4 stars. Let's discuss the books chronologically. I read this one first. This was so hyped. It has a lot of rave reviews, but then I didn't feel like it lived up to the hype when I read it. If you don't know anything about this book, it's about this girl Macy who is a doctor. She's a resident, a pediatrics resident, which is why I was a bit interested in reading this book because it might, talk about pedia stuff, which I'm very interested in. There's this guy Elliot who is an author, and they're very good friends when they were teenagers, but then they just drifted apart because something happened in the past, and so they stopped talking, and that was it. The story goes past to present chapters, so you get to see what happened and what built up to why they grew apart when they were young, and in the present when they accidentally saw each other again after a long time. And so it doesn't sound like a complicated story, but it's complicated because Macy is actually engaged already to this other guy who's very financially stable and all that. The 3 things I liked about this book was it was pretty hard to put down because you really want to know what happened to them. I think that's the only thing that I really liked about this book. Maybe that's why I felt like it was more problematic. Okay, if you're wondering about the straps, it's because I have a baby. What I didn't like about it is, I was really looking forward to her adventures in the pediatrics department. For some reason, I expected that they would have a lot of discussion on that, but no, not really. And there wasn't even an explanation why she became a doctor. So, yeah. What I also didn't like about this book is there's a part where this certain character thinks it's okay to be intimate with another person, sexually intimate with another person, even if they are already emotionally involved with someone. So isn't that kind of cheating? And I think the reason why I really got let down about this book is because the reason why they drifted apart is kind of a very immature thing. I mean, maybe, yeah, in that moment it felt like a big thing, but then when you think about it, compare it to the history, being at least friends with that person because of that thing, it was a little bit immature and unrealistic for me, maybe. Yeah, so that's why I didn't like it that much. I wasn't really rooting for their relationship, which is something you'd want when you're reading a romance book. Moving on to the next book I read, which is Beach Read. It was okay. As you can see, there are a lot of tabs, but it doesn't mean that I really loved it. I'm kind of like a chronic tabber, but what I can say is that Emily Henry writes really funny punchlines. I chuckled multiple times out loud, and I like some of the prose she wrote, like this one part where she snorted when she laughed. I love when people do that. My best friend does it. I always feel like she's drowning in life in a good way. I kind of like that line, because sometimes I snort when I laugh and some people find that disgusting, but I like how this book described it, that it's like someone's drowning in life because they snorted when they laughed. She writes stuff like that. And there's also another one. Here, this one. The warmth filled me up until I felt like a tea kettle trying hard not to whistle. So that's the first time I read about something about feeling warm inside, but then comparing it to a tea kettle trying not to whistle. It's great writing, great prose. Why this didn't work for me as a 5-star book? Again, I didn't feel so invested in the 2 main characters, which I realized I haven't even talked about. The 2 main characters, if you don't know, they are authors. The girl writes contemporary romances, and the guy writes literary fiction, dark stuff. One summer, they decide to switch genres, and whoever wins gets a blurb from that author. As the story goes on, the romance ensues. They're both dealing with life issues. I care about them more as individuals than as I did when they're a couple. That's it for Beach Read. And as for Reminders of Him by Colleen Hoover, which is a 4-star read for me, really liked this one. It's about a young mother who got caught in a very tragic accident, and for that she was sentenced to prison. And then after 6 years or so, she was freed, and she was on her way to her daughter, who she was actually pregnant with when she was in prison. So if this is like, if she got released 5 or 6 years, so her daughter is like also 5 to 6 years old by that time, and she wants to be in her life. But at the same time, you know, because of the circumstances, the people in the young girl's life, so her grandfather and her grandmother, they don't want the young girl to meet her mom or have anything to do with her mom, who is a protagonist here. But there's also this one guy who actually thinks that this mother has a place in this young girl's life. In this case, there's a romance aspect between the female protagonist, Kenna, and the male protagonist, Ledger. I like the romance between them, and I also like the story of Kenna and her daughter. What I really liked about this book is that it's very raw. When I read this, I just gave birth to my son. Being a mom and reading this, it hurt a lot when I was reading lines about her not being able to see her daughter. So I really felt that. I did get misty towards the end. So Colleen Hoover is really a great author. I think out of all the authors that come out with their books, she's very consistent in getting great ratings from me. Oh, he's like falling asleep listening to me talk about books. Okay, that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again next time. Bye!